Thank you all so much for coming. This has been awesome, and the story that I'll tell has been a bit of a trip. So I'm going to tell different parts of it, and what I'm actually going to talk about is the art of manipulation. So when I got out of college, I went to a small college in Vermont for multimedia graphic design. I graduated. I actually had a job at a car dealership and got laid off because I was too efficient, and decided that I was going to start a marketing agency. I had no experience in marketing. I didn't think I was a really great graphic designer. I didn't know anybody who did marketing, but I wanted to do this because I liked kind of working on different projects. I got a few clients. They started paying me. I ended up sitting down with the head of our marketing department at the college. A few months later, we go to Starbucks. We sit down. Probably about 20 to 30 minutes into the conversation, she utters the words, and in this tone of voice, at least that's how it played out in my head, was, "You can't do marketing. You don't have a degree in marketing. I have a doctorate in marketing." And I'm looking at her like, is she serious? I don't know if this is actually happening right now. And I go, well, I mean, and at the time it was really bad, but my business card said social media marketing professional. And she was arguing that I wasn't allowed to say professional. And I was like, well, by definition, people give me money for providing a service, and therefore I am a professional, which is a very low bar, mind you. So I kind of looked at that, and I walked out of there. I should have walked out sooner and more dramatically, but I didn't. And I walked out and kind of was like, wow, that's really ridiculous. Someone's telling me that I can't do something. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about what I'm going through, and they know nothing about the people who are paying me and are happy that they're paying me. And you know, we talk a lot about like reverse psychology. That was pretty good. Like, oh, you can't do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to. And so I had, kind of flirted around with entrepreneurship before. And one of the things that someone told me was, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So that played into my decision. And then the second piece to this advice, which I've always taken, is if you buy someone's opinion, you buy their lifestyle. And I didn't want to teach at a college, nor a small college, and I didn't want to get a doctorate, and I didn't want to talk like this. So I basically just ignored everything that she said. And that was kind of counterintuitive for me because I'd always looked up to people who had advanced degrees. I was raised to think that a 4-year school is like the best thing to do, and that those are the people that are just really good. So that was kind of a first lesson in marketing, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So skip forward to back in September. I had an agency. I was working primarily with people who teach people how to do multi-level marketing, and I was helping them sell their products. They were actually, strangely, having a lot of issues selling their products when their products teach people how to sell products. So I ended up positioning myself accidentally as this guy who was helping people who made info products for multi-level marketers who were selling their own products, teaching them how to do marketing. And so here are these guys that teach internet marketing, and I'm doing their internet marketing, and I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of cool. And then it got really annoying because I would do something and it would work and be like, that's awesome. And they're like, great, let's do this other thing. Like, that's kind of uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. Let's just stick here. And it kind of limited the creativity. And so I said, well, all right, I want to do these things, and I'm prevented from doing these things. So it got to the point where I ended up just firing all my clients because that was the only way that I was going to stop doing the work. I needed to move away from it. So I said, all right, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to create my brand, and I'm going to follow all of my own advice that I've always given to people that I've been, oh man, if you would only just do what I'm telling you to do, all these things would be wonderful. And at the time, I thought that 99.9% of the stuff that I was talking about was readily available. Social Media Examiner was one of those blogs that I was reading back in 2009. Everything that I've ever done has been an amalgamation of things that I've read. So I go, okay, well, what's my uniqueness? What can I talk about when I start this blog? How am I going to be different than everybody else? And I kind of thought about it, and I go, I don't think that anything that I have to teach is really particularly unique, but I do like stories, and I talk a lot. For anyone who knows me, would laugh at that joke. So I talk a lot about stories about things that I do and how I learn these random things, and a lot of times I learn marketing from dating, or I learn dating from marketing. And you parlay these different things into different areas. And one of my favorite terms is cross-discipline creativity. Something that you learn in one place can be immensely useful in another place when you take the context out of it and just kind of look at it. So basically what I did is I said, all right, stories. Okay, so stories have one ending. They kind of lead in a direction. So I said, all right, well, most of the things that I've learned in one particular way. So I'll tell the story of how I learned the thing through the often very theatrical story of how I learned it. Now, I was the guy that when I was probably 6, I took apart my parents' blender, never put it back together. I think I still owe them one. There's a lot of stuff in there, by the way. So I needed to learn how this blender works. So I took it apart. I broke it. I looked at, okay, why is all this copper wire in here? That's really weird. And started asking questions and went to the internet, waited 30 minutes for the page to load. I am not that young. And learned what an electromagnet was, ended up doing a science project on it like 2 years later because I thought it was cool. So that's how I've always learned things. So when I was originally learning Facebook ads, which was actually probably about 2 years ago, I watched this webinar. It was about 3 hours long. The guy probably spent an hour and a half saying how amazing he was. There was probably about 2 minutes of useful information, and that was about website custom audiences. So I started playing with those. I had a list of about 10,000 people, and I was targeting those people. And basically, it was going really well. My conversions were high, my costs were low, and I go, oh man, this is so much better than all the stuff that I'd been doing before. How can I take it to the next level? Because is anyone here a Mythbusters fan? Yeah? All right, there we go. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. There we go. Favorite term. So I said, how can I overdo this, right? It's not big, it's small, right? Because it's not about, let's get 100,000 people on the list. It's like, let's go little. So I go, in my head, in the course of just a set, I just had to say, I was like, well, it's not like big, it's small. It's like, what if there were like 5 people on a list? What if there's 1 person on a list? I should test that. I should test that on my roommate. And so this is back when I was, I had no idea if it would work. I wanted to test it out, see if it would work, and break it, and then see what I learned from that. So I created a custom audience that had 1 person, just my roommate. Now, to be fair, and I have to preface this, he screwed with me first. I promised vengeance. So about 3 months later, I had finally figured out what I wanted to do. I had tried a few other things, but they required persistence, and I got lazy. So this was going to be the thing that I could do. So I made an entire ad campaign that only appeared for him. And he's a sword swallower, so they were colorful. So the first ad that I had, he can swallow a 26-inch sword. Yes, an actual sword, all the way to the pit of his stomach. That's what he does. It's a thing. It's a job. People pay him. And he can't swallow pills. And it's hysterical because every morning he'd go and take a vitamin. And then in my living room for a party once, he swallows a 26-inch sword. I'm like, dude, you can't even swallow a vitamin. How are you doing this? And so it was always just this joke. And I go, that's obviously the first ad. So I found this stock image of a guy holding a handful of pink pills, just like nose down, close up. And it was trouble swallowing pills? Feel like you can swallow a sword, but you can't quite swallow pills? Click this link. And I started making all these ads. I had my girlfriend at the time was sitting next to me. We both knew him very, very well. So we started coming up with as much as we could that wasn't direct. The whole point of this was not to be direct. We didn't want him to know that we were doing it. It was like, hey, we're targeting you with ads. That's funny for about 10 seconds. We wanted to lead him in. And we knew that he was smart. We knew that he knew how ads worked. So we wanted to lead him in. And the whole goal was, raise your hand if you've ever been targeted with something and you're like, why am I being targeted with this? Right? OK, raise your hand if one of those ads was creepy. OK, so the goal is to make him feel really creeped out. And not like, how did they know I was single? But like, really creeped out. So that was the first ad. It took about 2 days. He sends me a message, and I have this whole conversation recorded in the article, which I'll get to in a sec. But basically, the conversation was, oh my God, I just got targeted with the most ridiculously niche ad in the history of advertising. It was for sword swallowers that couldn't swallow pills. I was refreshing the page for 5 minutes trying to get a screenshot. Oh my God. I can't breathe because I'm laughing so hard, and thankfully it wasn't in person because I could not hold my shit together that well. And he's just, and I'm visualizing him refreshing the page, refreshing the page, refreshing the page, and I'm like, okay, I got to pause the ad because then he's always just going to wonder, did I actually see that? And I didn't want to give him proof, right? So we make it go a little bit further, right? We want to make him more paranoid. So we start doing other ads, and this isn't in the article, but other ads of, let's say, sleeping habits. I knew how he slept, so started doing ads for that as well. And there were a lot of these, and I actually didn't post most of these in the article because they were very revealing as to who he was as a person. But the goal was to make him think, how is Facebook getting this information? It got to the point where 2 weeks in, he did call me out on it, and he's like, I think Brian's doing this. And I go, shit, I don't want to reveal this. So I paused everything and got busy and forgot about it. And I played it off. So he didn't think that I had done it, but I just wanted to let things cool down before I kind of revealed it. And I forgot. And about a week later, I call him. I'm standing in front of my fridge, and I say, is this yours in the refrigerator? And he goes, I'm on my way home. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I don't want to talk about it. I'll talk to you when I get there. I'm like, that's really weird. That's not something that he would normally say or do. So I wait, and 15 minutes later, he gets home, he walks in, and I turn around, and he's kind of like shoulders forward, and he's putting up his keys, and I go, hey, and he goes, hey. And he kind of jumps back, and I'm like, weird, and he goes into his room, and he shuts the door, and I'm like, why is he so jumpy? It's like, I should tell him that. So I made an ad, and I used his face, and I said, hey, Roderick, ever feel like your roommate's targeting ads to a niche of just you? To which I woke up to a message of very, 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 very well played. So that was always a story that I told at conferences. That was how I met Oscar and John. And there's a story behind that as well. But so when I went to go start this blog, I said, what's my uniqueness? And I said stories. Because that was actually how I learned Facebook advertising. I said, well, that's how you take it to the extreme. So now the other stuff, selling things, is easier. And I wrote that article, was the first article that I wrote. I wrote 2 other articles in addition to it. And I launched my blog, I think it went live at like noon. And then I posted that article to Reddit at 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. Very strategically, 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. I sent it to a few friends that I knew were on Reddit, that I knew were live on Facebook, so that I'd get a few upvotes. And then immediately it took off. Within 3 days, with no list, no one knew who the hell I was because I'd been working behind other people for so many years. No one knew who I was. I had no email list, and I had not $1 in advertising. And I posted it in one place. 450,000 people went to my site. 450,000 people. I got pursued by Adweek because I missed his original message. He interviewed me. That got picked up by Business Insider. I was casually mentioned by Al Jazeera. Didn't do anything. This was a funny joke. This wasn't marketing. This was a funny story that kind of told this thing. And from there, I started to get business. I started to get people calling me saying like, oh, the guy who owned, actually this is somewhat recently, the guy who owns cubiczirconia.com, which is, for those of you who know what it is, the big domain, goes, can you help me with with marketing? I go, okay, how did you find out about me? Well, I read your prank. And I'm like, how does that tell you that I'm good at what I do? It's really counterintuitive. It's a story. It's ridiculous. It's not really useful, but it shows that you're invested in learning. And so when I met Oscar and John, when I went up, I actually went to Affiliate Summit. I was doing affiliate marketing, but I didn't really know affiliate marketing. I didn't learn from affiliate marketers. When I met you guys, I didn't know who you were. I just thought you looked cool and went over to talk to you. And it was very personal and very relational, right? So you go up to someone not because you need something, not because you want something, not because you want to pull something from them, but because you want to give, you want to engage, you want to be a part of the conversation. And it ended up that I was in the speaker's lounge at the end of that, and I literally knew no one at that event. I went by myself. So when you talk about manipulation, a lot of marketers go at things very direct. They say, buy my product. You need to do this thing. You need to have this to do that. And people forget that you're talking to people. You're talking to other people like you who have beliefs like you and want to do things like you. So when you go at something, if I look at Tim here, you're in the splash zone, so I'm going to use you. Then I say, you're sitting wrong. One of 2 things are going to happen. You're going to sit in a way, you're going to move, and you're going to sit in a way that you think, that I think is the correct way to sit. Or alternatively, you're going to flip me off and walk out of the room. Or you're going to do the former and think the latter. Right. So I'm telling you, you're wrong. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to, just so that I'm right, but I'm going to think that you're an ass the entire time, right? So we think back to this college professor who told me that I wasn't allowed to do marketing. So I did the opposite because she told me I wasn't allowed to do it. So an alternative to that would be 7 ways the term lumbar support is about to change your life. Oh, cool. I want to learn this thing. It's this thing that I can gravitate towards. And so the story of how I use this in person, so Josh and I, who's behind the camera over here, so we started a company, long story short, not the reason I'm telling the story, but we have 68 people. And to get 68 people who are all around the world to work together is logistically challenging. And does anyone know Slack? Yes. For the people who didn't raise your hand, Google it. It's amazing. So it's a communication tool. It's the new version of ICQ. It's super useful and really fun because you can insert GIFs. I love GIFs. And so I needed to get everybody to use this because I knew that that would be valuable for our communication, but they were afraid of something that they didn't know. So I needed to get them to use the thing without making them use the thing and hating me for making them use it because it was something that they needed to use. Okay, so how do you make someone use something that you know is going to be to their benefit when they don't want to use it? Subtle encouragement. So what I did is I said every day I'm waking up, I'm answering my email, then I'm going to Slack, I'm answering all the messages in Slack. I'll switch that. So all the people who emailed me had to wait 4 or 5 hours, but they had to wait. And so when I responded, they'd be like, oh, this is a really urgent thing. I'd be like, I'm so sorry, we're all over in Slack. But yeah, I'll give you your answer. Like, oh shit, like I get an answer faster if I go over to Slack. Okay, I'm gonna go over to Slack. So right, I didn't tell them to go to Slack. It was subtle encouragement. I had someone iMessage me. And normally when I work, I'm very focused and I try and, because you get more stuff done, you have more beach time. So I just moved here, I need beach time. So I had my phone on vibrate behind my computer, notifications are off. The only way to get a hold of me if it's an emergency is to call me. People know this, they don't always do this. So someone texted me and they said, like, where's the thing that I need? And it's behind my computer. So about 5 hours later, I go, oh shit. And I go, hey, sorry, we're all over on Slack, but the thing that you need is, over here, whatever it may be. And she goes, oh shit. And I told her this later, and she goes, nope, I remember you did this to me. And I go, I did? And she goes, yeah, you did this. And I go, oh, yeah, I definitely did that. And she goes, and my immediate response was, I need to get on Slack right now because everybody's on Slack, and that's where everything's happening. And so when you're talking about, again, marketing a product, selling an idea, communicating who you are, if you go at it from the front angle and you try and tell people this is what it is, then they're likely to reject it, do the opposite, or realize that it's your idea, not theirs, and it will always be your idea and not theirs, and they can't carry it. With the Facebook ads prank, I have gotten so many messages of people like, oh my god, I want to prank my wife, I want to prank my roommate, I want to prank my dog, like everybody needs to do this. And the reality of it is that people started thinking of creative ways to do this, and it was inspiring to me because people looked at something that I had talked about and then said, I want to learn that, I want to break something, I want to find out how this works. And it went far beyond anything that I could have ever carried it because it became theirs, and they carried it. And that's the power that you have when you're starting to communicate ideas and communicate marketing, is to make something that you have someone else's and have them carry it as if it was their own, and it is. And so when you manipulate people, you're only able to do that when it's actually something that they would pull in and they would make their own. But you have to keep in mind that people's walls are up. They're afraid that they're going to be sold something. And so you need to communicate it in a way that they say, oh, this is my idea, and I'm doing it because I want to. They do want to, but you have to let them kind of gravitate towards it. You can't just force it on them. Okay, so let's talk about, this is one of the things, this is on a whim. Does anyone have an email that they send to a potential investor, someone they want to get a meeting with, or anything like that, that they've sent in the last, I don't know, month or so that you can pull up on your phone? Okay, whoever can pull it up the fastest, we're going to analyze that email. So language is very, very important. So when you come up to someone and if you, let's say, record everything that you do and then analyze what you just said and how it was said. So, all right, who has been dating before and you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that in the text message, right? Okay, so think that, but in marketing. A lot of people, you go to make an ad, you go to send an email. You don't think about it from their perspective, you think about it from your perspective of what you want to communicate, not what they want to hear, what they want to be interested in, whatever it may be. So, you talk about language is one thing, and then body language is completely different, but also immensely powerful. So I went on a hangout with someone once, was not a date, and at a certain point, yes. Okay. At a certain point, this was her stance. Okay? So we've got 4 things happening right here. We've got arm across, which means closed off. Touching the shoulder, which is a self-hug, so it's a comforting gesture. Hand is in front of the mouth, which means she's not saying what she's thinking. And she's leaning against a wall, which means she needs structure and comfort. So obviously she was uncomfortable. I didn't know why, but I go, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. And she goes, oh no, hand comes down. Without saying, what can I do, I acknowledged it and said, like, oh, you're uncomfortable. And she goes, oh, okay, you know this. So then it becomes a different conversation. When you use, and this is one of the things I freaking hate, when you use stock photography for marketing and you have people that are like this, that's creepy. This is creepy. If I walked up to you now, hi, my name is Brian, you wouldn't want to talk to me. So you talk about like organic imagery, right? When you smile, when you have a genuine smile, these nerves right here, which are subconsciously controlled, light up, and you have, it's called your ocular nervi, right? Watch TED Talks, this is all in there. And so when you actually genuinely smile, you look happy. So if you use a stock photo where someone's like, and you're trying to sell a product, like this person's happy because they bought a chair, like, you're not going to sell anything, right? So you have to show the actual emotion. You have to communicate the actual emotion, not what you think people need to hear. So do you have an email? All right, so is this someone that you know?
Semi, sort of, kind of, but not really.
Okay. So, dear insert team, I'm writing a third time in an effort to stay on your radar. All right, can I chew into this a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. I'm writing a third time in an effort to stay on your radar among the sea of applicants for your recently posted consultant EIR opportunity. Okay. First word, I, me, my. It's about you, not them. The first word that you're opening with, it's about you and not their interests. So you frame the conversation to say that it's not about them. They already have started reading this, they know you want something. First word. So I'm writing for a third time. I'm Jewish, that sounds like my mother. Like, this is the third time I've asked you to clean your room. Like, so you frame these things in a way that it's conversational, in a way that it's friendly, because that's what you're trying to be. Unless you aren't, but I would assume because you're a friendly dude. So you want to frame in the way, just because it's, and this is the biggest thing, just because it's behind a keyboard, just because it's behind a social network, just because it's behind any form of digital communication does not mean it's any less human. And so when you come at it in that way, people are going to respond to it in the way they'd respond to it in real life. If you go up and you memorize this verbatim and you go and you walk in there, they're going to do this the entire time.
Right.
And they're going to try and like go away because that's not something, we've lost it. But so I'll leave it at that, the first sentence. So the focus is to be human, right? So think about how it would be perceived if you did it in real life. Equate everything that you do online to what it would be like in real life. And if you need to, make it dating because it's hilariously comparative. So I'll end it with this. One of the articles I wrote after the prank article was, this is not a PG talk, Sex and Conversions, a step-by-step guide that guarantees you more of both. And the metaphor within was the internet is the bar, your website is your house, your email list is your bedroom, customer acquisition is, well, we all know. And the point is that if you want to get a customer and you bring them in a way that will go away with less than desirable, then they're not going to stick around for a really long time. People are going to go out to a bar and be like, you want to come home with me? And it's like, if someone says yes to that, which would be surprising, they come home and they go, oh, okay, all right, now bye, I'm done. I've done this, I'm out, that was all I wanted. If you want someone to stick around for a really long time, you have to start the relationship. You have to invest, you have to give, you have to learn, you have to be there and actually listen to what they're saying. So again, equate everything that you do online and every email that you send to how it would be perceived in real life. And then as long as you know how to communicate with other human beings in real life, you'll know how to do it online. Whether it's for marketing or bringing in new investment money or whatever it may be. But just remember that you're talking to other humans. You may be behind a keyboard and people may not be able to see you, but there's other humans on the other end of that. And that's about it. I don't have a fancy ending.
That's right. We have time for questions. So.
Yes.
So